This video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building a brand and growing your business online. Coming to you live from our New York City headquarters, this is your CEO speaking. My name is Mina. Welcome, new hirees. And on this channel, in this company, we talk about fashion, culture, and media. So, in case you missed it, Monica Lewinsky became the face of Reformation's February 2024 campaign, You've Got the Power, which generated more than $2 million in media exposure. The purpose of the campaign was to call to action for voter registration. Monica Lewinsky is an anti-bullying activist. She is a writer and a producer, though she first made headlines as the 22-year-old White House intern who Bill Clinton had an 18-month-long affair with during his presidency. This was all made public in 1998, and of course, because this was the 90s, the Wall Street Journal referred to her in print as a little tart. And Maureen Dowd won a Pulitzer Prize for her coverage of Lewinsky, in which she called her a ditzy, predatory White House intern. An intern being predatory towards the president. Love to hear it. Don't you miss 90s media, everyone. Lewinsky has talked at length of how the negative press coverage affected her life afterwards. In 2021, she told The Hollywood Reporter, "Just because I wasn't on the news every night for 20 years in the same way that I was in 1998 doesn't mean that the story ended. 10 years on, I still could not get a job. I couldn't support myself." In the last several years, some feminists have revisited the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal and specifically the press's treatment of Monica. As Helen Rumbelow writes for the Times UK, those in their 50s now reflect on their younger selves watching the slut-shaming vilification of a pair and doing nothing or joining in. Those in their teens and 20s are meeting Lewinsky afresh as the patron saint of young women whose lives were casually ruined by rapacious men in power. The Reformation collection is inspired by office workwear, with Monica wearing a button-down blouse, tie, and matching waistcoat and skirt in a few photos, posed in an office space overlooking the city skyline. She's no longer giving intern, she's giving boss, but like in a cool, sexy, retro way and not in a cringy 2016 lean-in girl boss kind of way. This was a really smart move for Reformation in my opinion, and the reason there was such a good response is in part because of the modern reframing of Lewinsky's story, and also because of the trending silhouettes of the actual clothing collection. Today, I want to talk about the incorporation of office wear in fashion these days, how we got here, and what this means for us. Despite what this video is about, we aren't in the 1980s anymore, and most people who work need to have a website, and Squarespace makes the process as simple as possible. Squarespace offers pre-made templates to get you started, but don't feel stifled. Once you select one, you can personalize it however you want so that your page reflects the uniqueness of your business. If you have products to sell, you can easily open your store native with Squarespace's tools to sell anything from physical products to downloadable products to memberships. And Squarespace also makes it easy for you to engage with your clients through their email newsletter feature. You can introduce your brand, your work, or yourself to new subscribers with welcome emails, or send announcements for an upcoming sale, or let your top customers know of a secret discount code. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Minalay to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain.
Makes me wish I had a job.
I've seen so many terms getting tossed around: office siren, corporate fetish, geek chic, corpcore, business core, among other names, to describe what's happening in fashion right now. That is the prevalence of neutrals, especially the color gray, button-ups, blazers, pantsuits, pencil skirts, and ties on the runway. I think the term corporate fetish, which was dubbed by writer Emily Sundberg, is the term I vibe with the most.
That's the one.
It encapsulates like the general cultural allure of office wear today and is less defined by like individual trends like Bayonetta glasses. Sundberg describes the phenomena as this: the corporate fetish is when people glamorize the idea of an office, the water cooler conversations, getting dressed, actually dressed, dry cleaner, pickup dressed for an 8 to 7 job, and spinning around in a desk chair. This is all while office occupancy hovers around 50% in New York. In comparison, the office siren look is very specific and is underneath the corporate fetish umbrella, but mostly takes from like early 2000s fashion trends like bayonetta glasses, button-up blouses that are buttoned down to the cleavage to reveal a little push-up bra, tight pencil skirts, and sling-back kitten or stiletto heels. But in actuality, what's happening in the culture goes beyond the early 2000s to also include a lot of like 1980s and 1990s elements as well. For example, back in the fall of 2022, Birdie put out an article called "Why is Every Fashion Girl Dressed Like Patrick Bateman Right Now?" Well, Patrick Bateman, the lead character of the movie American Psycho, did debut in the popular zeitgeist in the year 2000. The movie actually takes place in the 1980s, and costume designer Isis Musenden did a fantastic job, in my opinion.
Don't tell me, let me guess. Valentino Couture.
She dressed Christian Bale and his colleagues in couture suits to underscore the late 1980s boom economy and its corresponding self-obsessed Wall Street culture. She said in an interview, "The Italian house of Cerruti sent me the catalogs of their collections from those days, and I chose some designs which they then remade from the original patterns." As just a fun fact, the film actually had issues with designer labels because of the subject matter, the murderous subject matter. Cerruti only agreed to let Christian Bale wear their clothes when his character was not killing someone, and Comme des Garçons apparently refused to allow one of their overnight bags to be used to carry a corpse. So they used Jean-Paul Gaultier instead. Gaultier would definitely be down for this movie, which I think is like so hilarious.
Where did you get that overnight bag?
Jean-Paul Gaultier.
American Psycho is also based on the Bret Easton Ellis book of the same name. And in the book, Patrick Bateman is equally, if not more, obsessed with clothing, and he and his coworkers regularly discuss fashion trends with each other. I skimmed this book on my Kindle because I don't think I have the stomach to actually read this. I've just like heard that it's really sadistic and violent and much worse than the movie. And once again, I have a weak stomach. I couldn't even watch Game of Thrones, so I didn't read it. But I found a blog where the writer Kyle Barbo tried to chronicle all mentions of branded clothing in the book and found over 60 mentions before giving up. Spoiler, most of the items are Armani. Bateman also wears a 1980s two-toned Rolex Datejust 16013, which he references in the movie as well. But the one Christian Bale actually wears is a dupe, the Seiko SNX J90, because Rolex didn't want to be on the wrist of a serial killer. But can we blame them? It's not the best endorsement. If only they knew how impactful American Psycho would be today in terms of fashion. I'm going to read a passage here from the book regarding one of Bateman's suits to give a sense of how detailed Ellis gets with these style descriptions. "The suit I wear today is from Alan Flusser. It's an 80s draped suit, which is an updated version of the 30s style. The favored version has extended natural shoulders, a full chest, and a bladed back. The soft rolled lapels should be about 4 inches wide, with the peak finishing 3/4 of the way across the shoulders. Properly used on double-breasted suits, peaked lapels are considered more elegant than notched ones." He keeps going, but I think you get the gist. As you can see in the movie, Bateman wears a Valentino dinner jacket that has the 1930s-esque double-breasted peaked lapel design he mentions. This is all super in line with actual 1980s formal wear, by the way. GQ's December 1984 annual formal wear review states, "To be sure, the 30s remain the inspiration. Double-breasted dinner jackets with peaked satin or gross-grain lapels." So, Ellis definitely did do his research. There's also a gym outfit featured in the book that's not in the movie that's lifted entirely from the May 1988 issue of GQ. Bateman narrates, "I slip into a pair of crow-black cotton and lycra shorts with a white waistband and side stripes and a cotton and lycra tank top, both by Wilkes, which can be folded so tightly that I can actually carry them in my briefcase." Honestly, I would have loved to see this outfit in the movie. But let's get back to the present-day runway. At the most recent New York Fashion Week, Luar's collection, which featured broad-shouldered tops and jackets, was inspired by designer Raul Lopez's childhood people watching the corporate crew on Fifth Avenue and Wall Street. The luxury knitwear brand, The Elder Statesman, based their recent campaign on New York City's corporate culture as well. According to Emily Sundberg, who messaged the brand's creative director, Bailey Hunter, the theme was American Psycho. The campaign also shot in the WSA, an old office building that's getting revamped by the hospitality management company Happier People. The WSA IG bio currently reads, "A new downtown hub blurring the lines of the arts, production, working space, food, play, and culture. An 80s icon." The vintage office space itself is of course included in this larger corporate trend, and we can see it as a backdrop of many other campaigns, including Balenciaga's Spring 2023 campaign, the Skims Ultimate Nipple Bra campaign, and following Kim Kardashian GQ photoshoot, the Lewinsky Reformation campaign, Boyish Beauty's Brow Duo campaign, among others. I'd even include campaigns that embrace like the clunky lo-fi UI seen on old computers as part of this trend. Corporate fetish has gone so far as to include commuting culture, dubbed by Harper's Bazaar as commuter core, which I honestly think this is just like splitting the atom at this point, and I think it's a fake term because I literally haven't seen this term used anywhere, and I looked on TikTok hashtags, couldn't find anything. But apparently, commuter core refers to the messy, unpolished vibe of a working girl, like what she looks like before she even steps into the office. Like all core aesthetics, it's a romanticized version. So this working girl is not a girl working an entry-level job who can't afford a taxi. She's inherently a cool girl at the start of her adult life. Features of the style include large bags, hoodies under blazers, wrinkled trench coats, and sneakers. If you've seen the 1998 movie Working Girl, the main character Tess McGill iconically switches her white sneakers for pumps while at the office, showcasing the reality of many commuting women of her time. The so-called commuter core is a fetishization of her with the sneakers still on. Miu Miu's Fall/Winter 2024 runway show hailed the commuter girl with their big leather top-handle bags seemingly loaded to the brim with so much stuff that they're too heavy to carry by the handles. New York designer Jane Wade even titled her Spring 2024 collection The Commute, saying that she was inspired by her own experience working in corporate fashion.
I see you're wearing a suit.
What's it got to do with you?
It's been customary for people to wear professional outfits long before the 1980s, but Patricia Cunningham notes the 1970s as a major shift for women's fashion in the workplace because more women were joining than ever before. So the question was, what should women wear to the office?
I don't know what to wear. Ever?
John Molloy stepped up with an answer. Don't you love it when a man steps up to answer? He actually published 2 manuals, Dress for Success in 1975 for men, and the women's version, The Woman's Dress for Success book in 1977. In the Woman's Guide, Molloy emphasized that a woman's outfit choice could be the reason for her success or her failure in the workplace. He wrote this scathing critique of the fashion industry in his introduction, which I thought was really funny. A society in which the people in power are intent on keeping women barefoot, pregnant, and as far from the boardroom as possible cannot design clothes for women who have serious executive ambitions. The fact that the fashion industry's big number of the mid-1970s was the peasant dress, often made with yards of taffeta, shows how out of step the fashion industry really is. And while the Europeans design clothes that will keep you at home, the Americans are churning out garments that will keep you in the secretarial pool. Honestly, reading some of the chapters in this book, Molloy was actually way more progressive than I thought he would be. His book for women largely supported the same standards and methods he used in his book for men. The main idea for whatever gender was that you should dress as if you were already successful. His ideal uniform consisted of a skirted suit and blouse, preferably a dark suit with a light-colored blouse, and the skirt should be slightly below knee length, with natural color pantyhose and simple pumps. Accessory options include a feminine fedora, a contrasting scarf, a plain wristwatch, and a leather attaché case. Where he majorly flops is his attitude towards pants. Molloy wrote, "In most business offices, the pantsuit is a failure outfit."
That is enough, and shut up, and I hate you.
While this attitude towards pants comes across as really annoying, especially today, Molloy was actually pretty tame in comparison to other men of his era, which tells you all you need to know about men in that era. In the 1970s, there were actual offices, schools, and even restaurants that forbade women from wearing pants. As a response to the changing political climate, women protested and some filed lawsuits against their employers, arguing that not allowing women to wear pants, but allowing men to do so, violated Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which outlawed sex discrimination in employment. In response, many employers started to allow pantsuits and even miniskirts as acceptable office attire. So, it's been like 6 decades of corporate pantsuithood for women, but suits are still a masculine coded garment. Probably because men have just been wearing suits for a lot longer. They've basically been wearing some version of the suit ever since the Great Masculine Renunciation, which is a very funnily named phenomena coined by John Carl Flugel to describe men's widespread adoption of plain dress at the end of the 18th century. Because in case you forgot, Western men used to dress like this. The suit also carried an air of authority, discipline, and rigidness, traits associated with masculinity and the post-war era. James F. Baer, a former chief executive who worked in the 1950s, once told a reporter, "We were all the same way. We all wore white shirts with our suits. The thing here, the tie, is one of the craziest things ever invented. The symbolism of the tie had some elitism in it. It told the world that you were a manager. The suit was mandatory. It never even entered my mind to challenge that. It was just what we did. We never complained about wearing uniforms in the army, so we certainly weren't going to complain about wearing suits in the business world." What you had to understand about that time is that when the boss said, "Be there," you were there. You were totally committed to your job. Your responsibility was to be there. No excuses. There was a moment in the late 60s and 70s where suits and overall dress became more individualized, however. You can see this progression really clearly in the period TV show, my favorite TV show, Mad Men, which spans the entirety of the 1960s. At the start of the show, all the businessmen are wearing their identical gray flannel suits. And by the end of the show, there are characters like Stan Rizzo who come to the office in more relaxed, colorful attire. Much of the return to drab colors and standardized dress can be, in my opinion, just the result of trend cycles. Even though John Molloy gets a lot of credit for suggesting classic dress in the workplace, before he even published his book, classic suits were already on the rise. For example, at the Dallas Convention Center in 1974, the middle-of-the-market buyers, 60% of the market, were shunning the more contemporary shantung jumpsuits and patchwork jackets and heading for safer classics, blue blazers, gray slacks, and button-down shirts. And Forbes reported that suit sales jumped 4.4% in 1976, with classic suits even being purchased by the guy who never bought a suit in his life. They noted that even the vested suit was making a comeback. Molloy's book and other advice books were probably so well received also because the economy was booming and more people were hungry to be climbing up the corporate ladder. But let's get back to women. If you are a woman, how are you going to climb that corporate ladder? Jennifer Paff Ogle and Mary Lynn Damhorst analyzed business dress advice for women from 84 magazines and newspaper articles published from 1986 to 1994, and found that there was actually a lot of conflicting advice on whether or not you should wear sexy clothing to the office.
Your outfit.
What's wrong with my outfit?
Some authors said that wearing a blatantly suggestive dress increased a woman's chances of harassment, increased chances of rumors alleging that the wearer's success was based on something other than her job performance, if you catch my drift, and that women should just not rely upon their feminine wiles to get ahead in the workplace because they have so many other skills like intellect, creativity, and competence. The articles that were pro-suggestive dress claimed that a woman should use all her available resources to reach success, and that at some point, women should be able to depart from the male standards of conduct, which I guess include looking unsexy, once they got their footing in the business. Regardless, there was a general consensus that women should develop a personal style because looking extremely drab or conservative is often boring and doesn't make you stand out in front of all the other people working this job. And women should therefore use their appearance in some way to help them move up the career ladder. Even though magazines and companies go out of their way to shill out products, and a lot of this advice could be seen as attempts to promote consumerism, there's actually truth in how important it is to dress appropriately for the office, at least pre-pandemic. Nowadays, I think it's more important to at least know how to dress appropriately from the torso up. Jane Tynan and Lisa Godson wrote about how the corporate dress code is a way of exercising control over workers. In 2015, they talked to a 30-something-year-old market researcher named Heather who lived in London. Her company had a casual Friday dress code where they could wear jeans. However, Heather said, "On these days, I wouldn't probably get up as much and walk around because I'm conscious of the fact that I'm wearing jeans and I don't want people to notice and it doesn't look professional." Heather also talked about a former colleague who once received a letter from HR about how her revealing dresses were inappropriate. The authors write, "The fact that Heather's colleague was approached by a faceless HR department illustrates this disindividualized panoptic power at work in her office environment." But corporate fetish glosses over actual dress codes. Much of what we see in these fashion campaigns would actually be wildly inappropriate for the office if 90s standards are to be abided by. So maybe all of this is subversion at the end of the day. It's reinterpreting codes we're all familiar with to create new meaning. For some, putting on an oversized business suit could give them the feeling of control that a Wall Street executive had, made even more subversive if the person wearing it is someone who in actuality faces more glass ceilings than the straight white man. For others, dressing in edgy business clothes while hating your job could be ironic. For whatever the reason, corporate aesthetics have become aspirational in 2024. And it might be because of how non-existent corporate culture has become, at least in comparison to what it was. It's even more interesting given all the think pieces about how Gen Z is the most anti-work generation to date. The reason we're seeing this anti-work or less work agenda is partially due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which activated, as Angela Yang writes, a radical shift in priorities as people around the world, especially those who had the means to isolate at home, discovered new passions and a slower pace of life. Corporate jobs pivoting to remote work showed for the first time, and on a massive scale, that flexibility in work was possible without compromising productivity. And now that employees have gotten a taste, they're refusing return to old ways. The term fake email job has spawned on TikTok recently to describe the kind of aspirational jobs that are usually remote, require few hard skills, have little managerial oversight, and with little time commitment. And even though Gen Z gets a bad rep for their supposed not wanting to work, I think it's not bad to want work-life balance and to not want to have your work be your entire life and to also be able to have time to do things that you want to do and to not want to sit in traffic for 3 hours commuting. I think it's less about not wanting to work and more about wanting to not have work be your entire life. But regardless of how much you're actually working at your remote job, one thing most people can agree on is that remote work has killed the workplace culture. The Wall Street Journal interviewed Priya Parker, author of The Art of Gathering, How We Meet and Why It Matters. Parker explains, on Zoom, when everything is muted, the signals that you get as to whether or not a group is with you are deleted. It becomes a sterile environment. You can't hear people's sighs, groans, or laughs. It destroys one of the core elements of group conversation, which is a feedback loop, call and response. That's not to say that remote work is all bad. It makes some jobs more accessible for disabled folks, can be beneficial for parents who have young kids who can't afford childcare, and some jobs, like these fake email jobs, really don't require someone to sit in an office for 8 hours a day. But all this is to say is that corporate culture has become sort of obsolete for many people. Michelle Santiago-Cortez observed for Dirt Media, shards of corporate culture's remains are now floating around social media as memes or congealing into dystopian novels like Severance or The Other Black Girl. Finance bros and tech bros are still easy shorthand, but nobody quite knows where they work anymore. I also noticed that most of the corporate fetishizers are people who have never worked a real cubicle office job to begin with. And so it's unsurprising that the 2024 fashion version of the 90s office is a better, unrealistic version of what it was. Emily Sundberg explains the difference. The corporate fetish office provides structure, routine, and friends. Nobody is discussing the dreadful commute or awful hours or the looming horror of AI replacing a team. Everyone answers the phone and nobody is texting at their desk. It's the best version of the office we imagine and the one that we're not going to get anything close to as people get forced back in. There's also a sure crossover between this aestheticization and the old corporate fashion magazine industry as exemplified by The Devil Wears Prada. I think a lot of young people, me included, had the dream of working at a fashion magazine in a Andy Sachs, Jenna Rink, Carrie Bradshaw kind of way. While these women didn't dress for the office in accordance with the corporate handbook, they did have seemingly high-earning, glamorous positions in the corporate world with opportunities to move up the ladder. They also didn't have iPhones. But as magazines become less powerful and journalists become less respected, the dream has burst for many people. But ultimately, I think one of the biggest drivers of this trend is the desire for work-life separation. There's the idea that a place of work also means a place where that work is contained. The minute you step out of the office door, you're no longer on call, no longer expected to answer emails, and no longer thinking about work until you head to the office the following morning. Obviously, this is an oversimplification of what work life was actually like, but compared to now, when many of us are overstimulated by email and Slack pinging at all hours of the day, and the overall exhaustion of tech screen exposure, yes, the 90s office life could appear like a dream. Of course, there's also non-office fantasy reasons that make corporate core more enticing for the fashion industry at large. For one, the quiet luxury movement last year was a small bag movement. It also coincided with Succession, a show which denigrated the ludicrously capacious bag as being a symbol of too-pourism.
What's even in there? Huh? Flat shoes for the subway or lunch pail.
Also, in general, small bags have just been having a moment for years now because of the recycled Y2K small bag trend. So it makes sense that large bags would become trendy again because, trend cycles, they cycle. Even quiet luxury brand The Row released their own capacious Birkin-esque bag, the Margot. I also came across this newsletter, Cartoons Hater, which talked about the revival of the boobs era, which I don't even know if I'm allowed to use these terms because of YouTube policy, so I'm going to refer to them as the cleavage and the butt era. I think I can say butt. The writer makes the case that we were previously in a butt era for 15 years. She writes, "It was new and exciting to see Kim Kardashian in 2009 when we were on the tail of the 2000s, which was a skinny era and cleavage era. Women were no longer afraid to get bulky in the gym. In fact, we intended on it as long as it was confined to our glutes. Everyone wanted a big butt, including girls who were terrified of having a big butt just 5 years earlier. And 2010s fashion trends like athleisure and high-waisted jeans correlated with the butt era. But ultimately, pendulums swing, and that applies to body types too, which is why everyone was freaking out when Kim Kardashian allegedly reversed her BBL. Furthermore, the author suggests that the office siren with its button-down blouse is a sign of the cleavage era transition. In my personal 2024 ins and outs list, I put menswear as an in and bows as an out, and I think the corporate core trend is complementary to my prediction, not to brag. We just had a period of girl everything, girl dinner, girl math, girl blah, blah, blah. My girl culture soundbite from YouTube even became a trend on TikTok, which was weird. And so naturally, it makes sense that people would grow tired of this and hop on to the opposite, which is adulthood. And I don't know about you, but I feel like the stereotype of adulthood to me is a business suit and high heels, the image of our parents when growing up in the 80s, 90s, and or 2000s.
Just trying to locate my cubicle. I can't find it anywhere.
For anyone who's actually worked in one of these 90s time capsule offices, fashion's corporate fetish might sound like a joke. People of my parents' generation remember a time when office culture was a normal thing to complain about, not aspire to. In 1992, Robert Downey Jr. visited Wall Street for a documentary and said this to the camera.
If money is evil, then that building is hell. This is the most obnoxious group of money-hungry, low IQ, high energy, jackrabbit, wannabe big-time, small-time, talking, bothersome, irritating I've ever had to endure for more than 5 minutes.
When Christian Bale visited Wall Street to prepare for his role as Patrick Bateman, he told GQ, "I got there and a bunch of the guys on the trading floor, they were going, 'Oh yeah, we love Patrick Bateman.' And I was like, 'Yeah, ironically, right?' And they were like, 'What do you mean?'" Throughout the 80s and 90s, plenty of movies, books, and shows highlighted the problems with corporate executive greed. And in 1999, Hollywood even focused on the monotony of office life that stifled the everyday worker.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
There's a really great Now You See It video essay on this. The guy calls these movies cubicle movies. I'll play a clip from his video.
Being John Malkovich and to an extent all cubicle movies seem to reflect this idea in some way. Social forces compel us to conform ourselves into a certain definition of success, like having the good job and a comfortable life. But having to do this requires the belief that who we already are isn't good enough.
But I think the disconnect here for Zoomers and young millennials, other than the fact that we never actually experienced 90s office life, is the fact that Silicon Valley's coolification agenda in the 2010s feels almost worse. What I mean by coolification is, for the last 10 plus years, we've seen these large tech companies build out their offices to create not just a working environment, but a home, a lifestyle. A New York Times reporter took a look at a Google office in 2013 and noted the labyrinth of play areas, cafes, coffee bars, and open kitchens, sunny outdoor terraces with chaises, gourmet cafeterias that serve free breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Broadway-themed conference rooms with velvet drapes, and conversation areas designed to look like vintage subway cars. The office perks, while nice, were designed to keep people in the office for longer, maximizing productivity while building company loyalty. Once revolutionary, now it's chuggy. It doesn't help that more and more founders and executives are caught in the middle of company scandals, getting arrested for fraud, facing lawsuits, tweeting just insane takes, and ultimately shattering the illusion of a prestigious working environment. Last year, Reuters published an in-depth report on Axon, the company that makes tasers, and its fraternity-style hazings that involved, you guessed it, tasing their own employees. And just in the face of mass layoffs over the past year or so, it's also clear that company loyalty is not that prized after all. After FTX filed for bankruptcy in November, Brian Chesky, the chief executive of Airbnb, tweeted, "It feels like we were in a nightclub and the lights just turned on." The desire to dissociate from your boss has never been more necessary, and people are all but trying to separate the corporate body from its demonic head. In contrast, the retro 80s and 90s corporate lifestyle appears brandless. There are no logos and no Elon Musks. You have no idea what company any character in Fight Club or Office Space works for, because the identical monotony signifies only work, the idea of work, and nothing more. But of course, the idea of work itself is political. After all, the 1980s catapulted a new era of capitalism. Management got more powerful, and declining union membership gradually reduced the influence of big labor. Corporations accelerated this trend by closing factories where unions were strong, shifting production to Sunbelt states that had long anti-union traditions, and attacking government antitrust and regulatory policies. Ronald Reagan, who was president from 1981 to 1989, famously said,
"Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem."
Not to mention that it was the white-collar, straight white man who benefited the most. People of color, women, working class, and queer people all faced brutal inequalities, workplace harassment, and barriers to success. And as Annette, Lynch, and Katalin Medvedev put it simply, suits never do their own dirty work. They are not that kind of work clothes. The suits are not on the front lines in Libya, Iraq, or Afghanistan. Class-based power has its privileges, and one of them is not to soil your clothes. But in 1990, not even the white-collar white man was fully spared. America entered a recession, and within 2 years, 1.1 million office workers had been laid off, many of them from the middle management tier. Nikil Saval, who wrote Cubed, A Secret History of the Workplace, told Vox, during this time, layoffs became common and there was a rapid increase in mergers, and you had workers emerging from them and being thrown into cubicles. So the cubicle became the symbol of the transforming workplace, of impermanence and the disposability of workers. Because of the economic context, and also because cubicles were actually getting smaller, complaints against cubicles ballooned in the 90s. Some people compared them to prisons.
Hopefully it won't be too much like prison.
Ironically, in Texas, a prison system responded to overcrowding by redesigning their jails along the lines of an open-plan office with cubicle partitions. But like most aesthetics of today, corporate fetish is vibes forward. I think it says a lot that in all these corporate movies, we rarely see what it is the employees are actually working on. Even in shows like Mad Men, that's literally about work, where most of the show takes place in an office, there's an air of work, but the everyday drudgery is off screen. The more exciting bits, the socializing, the drinking, the dinners with clients, the flashy presentations, that's what we're shown. And it makes sense because these movies and shows were coming out at a time when people were still mostly in the office. And so this media was an escape from that office life. No one wants to come back home from work to see more work. And also would just be bad storytelling. Like the idea of like having a show where people just send emails and like copy papers, like who wants to watch that? But I think this is why most corporate fetishizers are people who have never experienced the reality of it. If they did, they'd probably be more obsessed with a different experience. Maybe next on the slate, for instance, will be a retirement core. Anyways, this is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. My name is Mina, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And take the day off. Bye.
Congratulations.
Thanks.